pleasure of getting to introduce you to Phillip today. Allie is at Mary Lee today, giving a presentation to a group of Indiana Junior Master Naturalists. So she asked that I come, and I'm thrilled to be here today for that. She did have a couple of quick announcements. Mugs on the Marsh will be this Saturday from 10:30 to noon. They will be starting at the LRWP offices on Smith Road. Short hikes for short legs will be on Wednesday, November the 15th from 10 to 11 at the barn. There will be a public hike, Beavers Under the Beaver Moon, on Monday, November the 27th from 6 to 7:30 at the barn. And then volunteering on Wednesday, December the 6th at Hop River. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Phillip.
You know, actually, I have a bio.
You have a bio?
I will do it here.
All right, then I will let you do that.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, Phillip, and for those of you that are on Zoom today, if you have any questions, please put those in the chat, and I will be asking those questions of Phillip as time permits. Thank you.
Well, good morning. Good morning. Oh, just lost a mic. Okay, so here's how I want to begin. My name is Phil Anderson, and I'll tell you a little bit more about me as we get going, but here's what I'm going to think about. Think about, what is your water memory? Doesn't have to be one, but I want you to focus on one water memory from your past. Whatever you want. And it can be a sentence, a phrase, one word. It's up to you. But where in your life do you think, when you think water, you think, oh, I'll give you an example. Mine was, grew up in the prairie, right? We talked about that. So we had a ditch. I lived on 2 farms growing up. The first farm right down the road was Little Potato Creek, not related to the one up here. Little Potato Creek. And we played in that one. Now it's really hard to go to a restaurant now and you see crawfish etouffee. You're thinking, those are just crawdads that we used to throw rocks at. And so we had that, we played in that a lot. We moved, and when we moved, let's see if I can. And when we moved on up, and now we were on the drain part of that same stream. But we still played in the drain, and that cut all the way across the farm, bisected the farm. That's kind of my water memory. Sometimes it was so deep that you could stand across it in August and never touch water. And I'm trying to figure out how the minnows survived. But everybody's got a water memory, and so what is yours? Because it shapes how we view water and how we view the resources in which it is. So anybody got one they'd be willing to share? Well, first thing I want you to do, turn to somebody next to you and just quickly tell them, what is your water memory? Okay? Okay? So tell me what yours is.
The ocean.
Ocean. Which one? Atlantic Ocean. Where?
Virginia Beach.
Virginia Beach. Was it where you lived or a place you went
We
to?
always went there and
Okay. Say Virginia Beach. What about you? Oh, there you go. There you go. So what part?
Southern Ontario.
Okay.
Just in Tassie.
Okay. No, that's good. Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. Now I'm going to get your attention back, and here's what I got. I got the Atlantic Ocean. Family always went to the ocean. I got Canadian fishing trip. Okay, I'm running around. So those sound really good compared to me walking around with crawdads in a creek, but it still was mine. What about somebody else? What was a memory that you'd share?
Baling hay on a hot summer day, the ice cold water.
Ooh, that is good. That is good. You know, we always pick the hottest day to do that. So yeah.
Swimming in the Chattahoochee River.
Swimming in the river.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. What else?
I remember the crawdad. The St. Joe River was so clear when it wasn't in flood stage. You'd walk down, you'd see those crawdads, and they'd see you and they'd shoot backwards.
Dart away.
And they'd create like a muddy water.
Oh, yeah, yeah, I know what you're talking about, yeah. What about somebody else? One more. Yeah.
I remember coming home with my wife from canoeing on Sugar Creek and finding my basement full of water because the sump pump burned out.
Yeah, remember, it doesn't say what's your good water memories, it just says what's your water. I've had a basement flooded twice, I understand that. I understand that. My daughter and I had gone out east to do musical auditions for college. And we got delayed coming home, we got stranded at an airport, had to stay somewhere else overnight, get home, call home, how are things? The wife said, the basement's flooded a second time. And it was a finished basement, all my office was down there, I was like, this is gonna be ugly. So yes, they're very memorable. They shape us, all right? So this is important because as we look at it, it helps us put our view of water in perspective, okay? Come on. Don't do this now. Okay, there we go. So this is a shot of southern Indiana that you have to be there in the right time of year because if it's water is low, you can see it's called Endoston Falls, down by Shoals. And it's on the White River. And then, and there's these giant whetstones out there, and there were button factories originally built on there. And you can still see where the footers were the button factory. Then they got cholera, wiped out the town, never was resettled again. But you can drive out on the whetstones. It's an interesting place. And so we all have these around. And so today we're going to talk about upstream, downstream, how do we share this watershed? Okay. So here's a little bit of background on me. This is my wife and I and our two daughters. Both are grown, both are married. One's in law school. One is, the older one's in law school, the younger one is a professional singer, and she has a 20-month-old grandchild, which I kind of like. And so this is us. And the other thing is that's important in here is 4 years ago my wife died, somewhat unexpectedly. So here's how I want to share with you who I am. I'm a teacher, and so I ran trade associations in agriculture for 25 years. So I worked in ag sales quickly. Came out of Purdue in agriculture, worked in sales, and then I ran the Indiana Corn Growers for a number of years, the Indiana Veal Association for a long stint, and the Indiana Beef Cattle Association for 12 years. So deeply tied to the farm and to the people who farm. And I didn't think I was teaching, but I was always teaching. And because I would talk about, here's what's happening in the marketplace, and here's how we do this, what are the issues, whatever. So I was always a small T teacher. Then, later in my career, I left all that, I went into rural development. And then a few years ago, 8 years ago, I was asked would I teach at IUPUI in Indianapolis. So for IU, it was a little tough. I'm a Purdue guy, but IU wrote me a check and I said, I can cash that. So I became a capital T teacher, so I do training I do servant leadership training around the globe, and I do cultural tourism. Tell you about a little bit more about that. I'm a teller. Everybody's got a story, right? We started the conversation with stories. Now, the reason it's not storyteller is because I like alliteration, and S screws up my T's. So it's just teller. And I never claim your stories, but I will take your stories and share your stories. If I hear them like, there's something here, let's talk about that. And the last thing, covered up a little bit by the screen, is I'm a traveler. So what does that mean? It meant that I was always this young, kind of geeky map person growing up. Because my father would say, let's go take a drive. Where are we going? Doesn't matter. Okay. And we'd take a drive. And I did this, and I did it in my career. And I would go out, and I'd be out there, and I go, oh, I wonder what that dot looks like on the map. So it's how you end up in places like Gar Creek and Milan Center. You know, these places. Now, I'm not talking about Grable, which you can drive down and you go, oh, there's Main Street Grable. No, I'm talking about places that you go, that's it, isn't it? Because you go to Guard Creek, last I remember was there's a crossroads. And you gotta know you're there, there's no signage. And there's even the places where you can, where you don't, there's nothing there. And I've got pictures of those.
Can you move your mic just a little bit? They're saying it's a little garbled on Zoom.
Okay. We'll try that, see if that works any better, okay? So here's the crux of all this. I started doing this, worked in agriculture all of my career, and my wife and I like to wander around. We would go traveling all over the state. And we got to the mid-90s and I said, we have been to a lot of places, marking this off on this big county by county atlas. I said, let's go see it all. So there are 2,230 dots on the map. Cities, towns, and all those other little nondescript dots. No, it's behind you, you're good. Oh, he's gonna shut his off too. So there's 2,230 dots, and in November of 2016, we finished going to all 2,230 dots. So what I will do at some point, if we're talking, I'll say, where are you from? And we'll drill down to figure out where you're from, because I've been to all those little dots. And there's a story there. And every place has a story. In fact, every place has many stories for the people who live there. Okay? So the last thing that makes all this work with me working with Indiana Humanities and that is that I'm a connector of dots. That's in my personality. It's not something I learned to do. It's kind of inbred. And so I'm a connector of dots. So a lot of people look at my career and say, okay, how did you end up teaching tourism in a classroom when you ran trade associations? I don't know, but it works. And I get to teach students all over the world about travel and cultural tourism, which is every place has a story. And so let's go see them. All right. So we're gonna start taking, and we look at this upstream, downstream. It's all about the water. So let's begin this. Where do we use, not how, where do we use water? Anyway, what's that?
House.
At the house? Right?
Everywhere.
Everywhere. That kind of covers it. But here, let's look at this. We do it in urban cities, right? We do it in suburbs. We do it in small towns. We do it in these little villages. We do it in rural spaces, and we do it in wild places, right? That's where the water is. Now, how do we use it? Okay? And that's hidden behind it. The word how is hidden behind that. So here we go. Farming and food production, recreation, housing and residential, industrial applications, wildlife, natural spaces, wastewater, systems and septics, drainage, drinking water, groundwater, landscapes. Here's a question for you. Look over on the left, look over on the right, which one's the most important? Look just on the left, which one's the most important? It's tough. It's all about your perspective, right? It's all about your perspective. If I now live on the north side of Indianapolis. I live in Carmel, it's where my wife's hometown. It's now a city of 100,000 people. Some people would call it a suburb. If you go to California, New York, and places like that, it's a suburb. In Indiana, it's a city, full-blown city. And then I live on the edge of Indianapolis. My family lives out in these places. Which one's most important? Tell me where you live, and I'll tell you what's important to you. Okay? All of those things on that side. Somebody said groundwater. What else? What's the most important on that list? Is there one? No. No, there's not. And that's part of the challenge, is because when we think about these things, we're like, oh, well, it's this. Because that's what we're talking about today, and that's where I'm coming from. Well, what about the other stuff? We have to look at that. So when you look at this picture, is this a circle, is this a box, or is it other? What do you see? What do you see? So somebody said all three. So is one right, one wrong? One right, two wrong? Or are they all right? They're all right. They're all different. And you know, when we think about this, so you can go out to a little river, looked it up, 22.6 miles long from beginning to end. And the beginning is, well, we dug a canal, we dug a ditch this way, and then we dug it 90 degrees that way, and then until we get out to where it's actually looks like a stream of a sort. But what is it? And how do we see it is, how do you interact with it? If you're farming on the edge of it and it becomes a place for your water to drain, you look at it a certain way. I need tile drainage. I need tile to get the water to the river so the river can send it on down. Okay? So we have a whole variety of things. So we look at this, and again, it's right on track. They're not wrong, but they are very different. And typically we see what we see, and we don't ask the questions about the way others see it. And we're going to ask that today. Okay, so I'm going to take you and drill you down a little bit. Here's a watershed map of the U.S. So where do we focus our efforts? Where are you from? Okay, tell you that one. Now, I come down, I'm a central Indiana guy. The creek, the drain at our house, the Miller drain goes into Little Potato Creek, goes into Lye Creek, goes into Sugar Creek, goes through the shades in Turkey Run State Park, dumps into the Wabash, Ohio, Mississippi, Gulf of Mexico. Most of Indiana looks at the Wabash and the Ohio River as, oh, those are ours. They couldn't even tell you what goes on up here. Okay? So but the green is the Great Lakes, right? And we don't even do this justice because we're like, we would not show Canada. For God's sakes, why would we show Canada? Does it matter? Yeah, it matters. So this is the U.S. watershed. This is the Great Lakes Basin, right? So everything above the lakes is Canada. Do we look at it this way? So you go to Indiana, you go, we're all standing like right here. How do we see it? How do we see it? And it's I think the Great Lakes, well, clearly the largest freshwater collection anywhere in the world. It's enormous. And Superior by itself dwarfs everything else. It doesn't look that way, but it dwarfs everything else in volume because of its depth. Okay? All right, so let's drill down a little bit farther, and here we are. Of all things, we've effectively covered the area we're talking about today. But you've got this, people see it, they go, okay, yeah, we understand these rivers around the Midwest, around Indiana, right? Okay, we got that. And then you dig down a little farther, oh, now we got to make sure that Ohio, Michigan, and those places don't count anymore. So we only look at inside the Indiana boundaries, which are arbitrary at best. All right, and so we have these, and I'm doing some work up in Noble County, and I pulled up a watershed map, and I said, now this is a challenge because half of Noble County is in the St. Joe watershed, and another third of the county is in the St. Joe watershed, but different St. Joes. And one goes to Lake Michigan, and one goes to Lake Erie, and then the rest of it is the Eel and Tippecanoe, and it goes to the Gulf of Mexico, along the Wabash and the Eel. So you go up there, you got 3 continental divides. You've got a continental divide. That's where we are right now with this little river, right? It's significant. Okay, let's drill on down and see what we find. Look at this. This is called the 8-digit hydrologic unit code. So they break all the watersheds into these. I gotta move this. That's driving me crazy. Right now, the people from southeastern Indiana are not in the room. We're not going to talk to them because I want us to see up here. And if you talk to people in Indiana, you go, oh yeah, I've heard of the St. Mary's. Oh yeah, I know the St. Joe. The Maumee, yeah. The Blaze. Where's that? It's in Ohio, right? But that's, again, it doesn't fit in our mental picture of Indiana because it's not an Indiana stream. Okay? But you get it. Oh, let's just drill down one more time. Gotta do it. There is the 12-digit watershed codes. Now you're really breaking this down. You gotta go looking for this stuff. Okay? So here, all the rest of those are collections, but what happens here is, this is where we get rainfall. This is where we have lakes. This is where we have springs, culverts, drains, dug wells, all of those things that occur at a level like this, or even smaller, which is at your place. Why does water matter? Because it affects every house. It affects every place. And so the challenge in all of this is, do not let these boundaries that we make with surveyors, which are nice rectangles. Does anybody know why the counties are about the size they are here in Indiana? Anybody? That little bit of history. It had to be within, what was it? It had to be within 1 day's horse ride of everybody in the county. Now, if you're in Allen County, you better have a good horse, because it is a big, big county compared to, it's the biggest one in the state, right? But we so often talk about boundaries, and so you have to talk about the Little River. Well, you can't talk about Allen County, you gotta talk about Allen and Huntington. You're gonna talk about the Wabash, you're gonna talk about a whole bunch. And the people on the top and the people on the bottom are going, we don't even know who those people are. We're not worried about them. Oh, I don't know, wait and see what they send down the river to you. You'll worry. You'll worry about them. It'll change your perspective. My brothers and I have these conversations. I said, do you ever think about what we do here in the spring and the fall with the crops? What impact does it have on people canoeing in Sugar Creek, in Turkey Run and the Shades? Do the people who are canoeing on those creeks understand what they do when they stir things up, they leave trash or whatever it may be, and they leave it and it just goes on down to somewhere else? Are we thinking about that? Are we thinking, well, that's just me, no big deal? Or are we thinking about everybody else? It's consideration. So watersheds, by their very nature, are not linear. Okay, now I gotta move this thing back up. Oh, come on.
I think you got it.
Are you still good where you are?
I am good where I am.
They don't need to see me and do this too. Okay.
We're good.
Okay. So watersheds are not linear.
I'm here and
Okay.
chat, so we're good.
At no point do we go, oh, here's the agricultural section of a stream, and I can show you where it starts and here's where it finishes. Oh, and then we're going to go on to the residential section, and this is where it starts and here's where it finishes. And then it goes from there, it goes into the industrial section, and then it goes into wildlands, and then the recreation section and the wastewater section. Doesn't work that way. It goes in and out and in and out and in and out and in and out. Right? So what it is, keep screwing with that. It's a jumbled system of uses. Because it's like in an industrial section, then it's in a housing section, and then it goes to a place where there may be a farm field, and then you're like, okay, I got this, I got the marsh, and it keeps going in and out, and it doesn't start, stop, for the purposes of, well, we could do better planning if it just, here was the industrial section, here was the housing section. It doesn't work that way. And so it's not only a jumbled set of uses, it's a jumbled set of competing uses, right? We're competing on how we use it. We know if you look on a map, an aerial map of the Little River, I was doing it this morning just to check, and it says on Wikipedia that the stream starts in Ardmore Knolls neighborhood. And you gotta look real hard to find it in Ardmore Knolls. And then we looked, and it is as straight as an arrow, because they redug the whole thing, and it runs along the pits, the gravel pits.
Comes out of
So
the
it's like,
pits and-
okay, we got the gravel pit over here. It may have used to go that way. It's gonna run straight down this fence line, and we get down, we're gonna turn, and we're gonna go that way for a while. And then it runs, so it's just as dug as straight as possible. All right, so we've got competing uses. We got competing uses for this stuff. And with competing uses, we enter the blame game. Okay? So here's the question. Do you recall there was a poem by Robert Frost that said, I took a walk and I came through the woods and I came to a fork in the road. and I had to choose. And he chose the road less taken, right? I'm gonna challenge that. What happens if we're walking the other way? So what if, not if we're walking to where we have. Okay? Not as if we're walking to this way where we have to choose, but what if we're coming from here where we're saying, what if the uses and the policies and the places all came together? Now when they come together, we're gonna have one of two things happen. You're gonna have, oh, please. Okay. And it's us, we're the people. And uses don't exist without us, in essence. Policies don't exist without us. Places, at this stage in the game of development, they don't happen without us. We can say, oh, well, it's natural, we're gonna protect it. But that means we've decided to protect it. And so with all of this, we have a choice. Are we gonna engage in the collision of all these things, or are we gonna engage in the convergence of all these things? All of them come together, can we do something better with them? Okay? So, here's one of the challenges we face. This is the tip of the iceberg. And you know, the key thing about an iceberg is what you see is a lot less than what there really is. Most of the iceberg's below the surface. So, it's the same thing with these issues. Here's a good example. Here's what we know about climate. We can argue reasons, we're not gonna argue reasons. We are gonna talk about what's happening with the climate. And it's factual. So here's a couple of things. We know, this is a report from Purdue University in 2018. We know we have warming temperatures. We know. Not here to point blame, we just know that's the case. And so we know we have increasing extreme heat days. Is it happening here? Is it happening other places? Yes. Texas used to be hot. Now Texas is just a smoldering place in the middle of the summer.